The scent of polished mahogany and wilting lilies usually meant one thing for Maya: another shift. Tonight, however, it was different. Tonight, the air thrummed with an almost electric current, thick with anticipation and the hushed whispers of 1,000 secrets. It was the annual Silverwood Gala, the most exclusive event of the season, and Maya, with her tray of champagne flutes, was just another cog in its opulent machinery. Her uniform, a starched black dress with a modest white apron, felt like a costume in a play she hadn't auditioned for. Her sensible non-slip shoes, however, were her only anchor to reality in a room where chandeliers dripped diamonds and laughter tinkled like scattered crystals. Maya usually loved people watching, finding stories in the fleeting expressions of the city's elite. But tonight the stories felt less human, more primal. The rumors had started weeks ago, a low hum that built into a crescendo of excited chatter. The Lycan King Theron was expected to make an appearance. The Lycan King, a figure of myth and legend rarely seen by human eyes, even those of the privileged few who graced these hallowed halls. His presence was usually reserved for matters of extreme importance, not social gatherings. What had prompted his attendance this year? No one knew, but the speculation was as intoxicating as the vintage wine flowing freely. Maya navigated the throngs with practiced ease, her mind a well-worn path of to-do lists and tomorrow's grocery run. Her life was a tapestry woven from early mornings, late nights, and the persistent hum of the city. A small apartment, a demanding job, and a perpetually empty savings account. That was her reality. Dreams of grandeur were reserved for paperback novels and the occasional lottery ticket. As she passed a group of women draped in silks and jewels, she caught snippets of conversation. "They say he hasn't been seen in years. He's terrifying but undeniably handsome, I hear. Imagine being his mate. The power." Maya rolled her eyes internally. Fated mates, supernatural power. It was all fodder for sensationalist tabloids and the fevered imaginations of bored socialites. She believed in hard work, rent payments, and the undeniable magic of a perfect cup of coffee on a Monday morning. Still, despite her practical nature, a flicker of something undefinable stirred within her. The air was indeed charged, more so than any gala she'd ever worked. It wasn't just the nervous energy of expectation. It was something deeper, a low thrum that vibrated through the very floorboards, a subtle pressure against her eardrums. It was almost as if the building itself was holding its breath. She reached the edge of the grand staircase, pausing for a moment to take in the full spectacle. Cascading flowers, shimmering silks, the glint of gold and silver everywhere she looked. It was a scene ripped from a fairy tale, albeit one where she was merely an extra, a shadow in the background. She felt a familiar pang of longing, a quiet ache for a life less ordinary, even as she mentally chastised herself for it. Dreams were expensive and reality was relentless. Just then a hush fell over the crowd, starting at the entrance and rippling through the ballroom like a wave. All eyes turned, a collective gasp echoing through the vast space. Maya, clutching her tray, felt her own heart give an involuntary lurch. The air grew impossibly heavy, thick with an unseen force that pressed down, demanding attention. This wasn't a celebrity making an entrance. This was something far, far greater. This was the arrival of a king, not just of people but of an ancient, powerful race. She felt a prickling sensation on her skin, a shiver that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The murmurs died completely, replaced by a profound silence that seemed to suck the very sound from the room. And then he appeared. Chapter 2. An accidental collision. He moved with the silent grace of a predator, yet there was nothing predatory in his initial demeanor. King Theron. The name, whispered with awe and fear, now had a face. And what a face it was! He was impossibly tall, broad-shouldered, and exuded an aura of power that felt almost suffocating. His dark hair, thick and slightly untamed, framed a strong jawline and piercing golden eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the opulent ballroom in a single sweeping glance. He wore a tailored suit, dark as midnight, that did little to disguise the formidable physique beneath. He was not merely handsome, he was breathtaking, a force of nature barely contained. Maya, like everyone else, was frozen. Her gaze, however, wasn't just captivated by his imposing presence. It was drawn to his eyes. Those golden eyes. They held an ancient wisdom, a profound depth that hinted at untold centuries of existence, of battles fought and empires built. They were intense, almost burning, and as they swept over the crowd, Maya felt an inexplicable pull, a strange tug at her very core. He paused at the top of the grand staircase, allowing the silence to stretch, to amplify his presence. Then with a subtle nod he began his descent, each step deliberate, powerful. The crowd parted for him as if by an invisible force, creating a wide path that led directly into the heart of the ballroom. A single security detail, equally imposing, followed a respectful distance behind. Maya knew she should move, should continue her duties, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. Her tray, still laden with full flutes of champagne, suddenly felt impossibly heavy. She watched him approach, closer and closer, her breath catching in her throat. The air around him shimmered, almost visibly, with an energy that vibrated against her skin, making the fine hairs on her arms stand on end. He was almost past her, a mere few feet away, when disaster struck. Another waitress, flustered and distracted by the king's proximity, stumbled backward, her elbow catching Maya's arm. The delicate crystal flutes on Maya's tray teetered, then cascaded. Slow motion. That's how Maya would remember it. The glittering spray of champagne, the shattering glass, the horrified gasp from the surrounding guests. And then the sickening realization that a significant portion of the expensive liquid, along with several shards of glass, was now decorating the king's impeccably tailored suit jacket. A cold dread seized Maya. Her career, her life flashed before her eyes. She was going to be fired, publicly humiliated, possibly even eaten? A ridiculous thought, she knew, but the sheer raw power radiating from him made her mind conjure absurd scenarios. The king stopped dead. The silence in the room became absolute, so profound it was deafening. Every eye in the ballroom was now fixed on Maya, then on the king, then back to Maya. She felt a flush creep up her neck, her cheeks burning with shame and terror. "Oh my God, I am so sorry," Maya stammered, her voice a reedy whisper in the cavernous room. She instinctively reached out, her hand hovering, unsure whether to try and blot the champagne or simply flee. Theron turned slowly, his golden eyes, no longer sweeping the room, now narrowed, focused entirely on her. His expression was unreadable, a mask of controlled power. But there was something else there too, a flicker of something Maya couldn't quite decipher. Surprise. Curiosity. Their gazes locked. And in that instant the world tilted on its axis. The oppressive silence of the ballroom faded, replaced by a roaring in Maya's ears, a sound like a distant drumbeat. The sparkling chandeliers, the hushed guests, even the sticky champagne on the king's suit, it all blurred, receded, until only his eyes remained. Golden. Molten. They seemed to pierce through her, stripping away her uniform, her job, her entire mundane existence, seeing something within her that she didn't even know existed. It wasn't just intense, it was devouring. It was a recognition so profound, so ancient, that it bypassed all logic, all reason. A jolt, like a lightning strike, coursed through her body, radiating from where their gazes met, spreading through her veins, making every nerve ending sing. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Her breath hitched. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild, untamed thing. The king took a single slow step towards her, his eyes never leaving hers. The security detail tensed, but he merely held up a hand, a silent command. He reached out not to touch the champagne but to cup her chin, his thumb gently stroking her jawline. His skin was warm, unexpectedly soft, yet beneath it she felt the undeniable strength of ancient bone and muscle. "Mine," he rumbled, his voice a low, guttural purr that vibrated through her very bones, a sound that seemed to echo not just in the room, but in the deepest parts of her soul. The word, a possessive declaration, hung in the air, charged with an undeniable, terrifying power. Chapter 3: The King's Claim. The single word echoed in the sudden, absolute silence of the ballroom, reverberating through Maya's very core. It was a declaration, a thunderclap in the quiet, and it carried the weight of ancient power, of undisputed authority. Maya's mind reeled, struggling to reconcile the mundane reality of her existence with the impossible, intoxicating claim hanging in the air. Her own hand, seemingly independent of her will, lifted to touch his, still cupping her chin. His skin was warm, radiating a deep heat that seemed to chase away the chill of her terror. His golden eyes, still locked with hers, blazed with an intensity that promised both protection and possession. It was a gaze that stripped her bare, revealing a part of her she hadn't known existed, a primal, instinctual response to his assertion. The collective gasp from the assembled guests was a wave of disbelief, of outrage, of stunned silence. Maya could feel their stares, hundreds of them, burning into her back, but they were distant, muted, as if she were underwater. All that mattered, all that existed, was the unwavering gaze of King Theron. King Theron, a voice smooth and laced with barely suppressed fury, finally broke the spell. It belonged to Lady Seraphina, a formidable woman of formidable lineage, who had clearly harbored hopes of her own for the Lycan King's affections. She stepped forward, her expensive gown rustling with indignation. "What is the meaning of this? This human waitress? You can't be serious." Theron, however, didn't even glance at her. His eyes remained fixed on Maya, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his lips, revealing perfectly white, slightly elongated canines that sent a shiver down Maya's spine, not entirely of fear, but of something wild and exhilarating. He lifted his other hand, his thumb tracing a delicate line across her cheekbone. "Serious indeed, Lady Seraphina," he finally responded, his voice still a low growl, but now carrying a dismissive edge that left no room for argument. "She is my fated mate." The words hit Maya like a physical blow, stealing what little air remained in her lungs. Fated mate. The term, usually reserved for the fantastical pages of the romance novels she occasionally indulged in, was now being spoken in the same breath as her name, by the Lycan King himself. It was a concept so alien, so utterly impossible, that her mind rebelled against it. "Mate." Maya finally managed to croak, her voice barely audible. Her own hands, still clinging to his, trembled. I don't understand." Theron's smile softened infinitesimally, a subtle shift that sent a strange warmth through her. "You will, little one," he murmured, his gaze dipping to her lips. "You will." He then turned his head slightly, his golden eyes sweeping over the stunned faces of the guests, holding each one for a moment, a silent challenge that brooked no dissent. "Tonight," he announced, his voice now ringing with authority that filled every corner of the ballroom, "Maya is no longer a waitress. She is my queen." Chaos erupted. A cacophony of gasps, shocked exclamations, and indignant murmurs filled the air. Several high-ranking Lycans, identifiable by their subtle, enhanced features and formidable auras, looked visibly uncomfortable, exchanging bewildered glances. Humans merely looked terrified. Maya, caught in the eye of the storm, felt her knees threaten to buckle. A waitress from the East Side? This wasn't just a twist of fate. It was a cosmic joke, a cruel, beautiful deception. She was nobody. She had no power, no lineage, no understanding of this hidden world that had just violently collided with hers. Her eyes darted around, searching for a familiar face, a friendly glance, but found only shocked scrutiny. The overwhelming sense of displacement was a cold wave washing over her. She was a stranger in a strange land, completely exposed, completely vulnerable. Theron, sensing her turmoil, tightened his grip on her chin, a silent anchor. He drew her closer until her body was almost pressed against his. The scent of him, rich and musky, with an undertone of pine and something uniquely animalistic, filled her senses, intoxicating and strangely comforting. "You are safe now, my queen," he whispered, his lips brushing her temple, sending a jolt of pure sensation through her. "You are with me." But safe was the last thing Maya felt. Her mind raced, grappling with ancient prophecies and forgotten lore that she had dismissed as mere fairy tales. The Lycan King. Fated mates. It was all too much, too fast, too utterly unbelievable. She looked into his golden eyes again, searching for answers, for a clue that this was all a grand, elaborate prank. But what she saw was unwavering certainty, a fierce possessiveness, and something else, a deep, resonant joy that seemed to emanate from him. Her destiny, she realized with a horrifying, exhilarating jolt, had just been irrevocably rewritten. And she had absolutely no say in the matter. Chapter 4: The Court of Whispers. The immediate aftermath of Theron's declaration was a whirlwind of sensory overload for Maya. She was whisked away from the ballroom, not by her employer, but by two imposing guards who moved with a silent, synchronized efficiency. Theron remained by her side, his hand never leaving her back, a constant, reassuring and incredibly possessive presence. The terrified faces of her colleagues, the hushed, stunned expressions of the guests, it all blurred into a surreal montage as they navigated the opulent corridors. They ascended to a private suite, a space far grander than anything Maya had ever imagined. Silk tapestries adorned the walls, velvet furniture beckoned, and a roaring fireplace cast dancing shadows across a massive four-poster bed. Yet even in this haven of luxury, the tension in the air was palpable. Theron finally released her, though his golden eyes continued to track her every movement. He moved to a small bar, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. "Drink this," he commanded, handing her one. "It will help with the shock." Maya took a tentative sip. It was potent, a fiery liquid that warmed her from the inside out, sending a dizzying wave through her. She gasped, then coughed. Theron chuckled, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the silent room. "Careful, little one. It's strong." "Strong is an understatement," Maya managed, her voice still shaky. She set the glass down, her mind still struggling to process. "King Theron, with all due respect, what is happening? Fated mate? I'm a waitress. I don't belong here. This is insane." He moved closer, his proximity filling the air with his unique scent, making her senses swim. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "Insane to you perhaps, but to my kind it is destiny. An undeniable truth." "But how?" she whispered, her gaze meeting his again. The intensity was still there, the burning recognition, but now it was tinged with a quiet patience. "The bond," he explained, his voice low and soothing. "When a Lycan finds his true mate, there is an immediate recognition. A spark, a pull, a claiming of the soul. For the king it is even more profound. It is a connection woven into the very fabric of our being, strengthened by ancient magic, by the moon itself." He moved to a large window, gazing out at the city lights twinkling below, a stark contrast to the ancient world he represented. Prophecies have spoken of the king's mate appearing when the Lycan realm faces its greatest challenge. When the balance of power shifts and a new era is to be forged. "You are that herald, Maya." Maya stared, speechless. Prophecies? Challenges? She was struggling to even understand why he thought she was his mate, let alone some cosmic destiny. "But I don't feel special. I'm just me." He turned back to her, his golden eyes filled with an almost wistful affection. "That is precisely what makes you special, my queen. You are untouched by our world's politics, its power struggles, its ancient rivalries. You are pure potential." His words, while meant to be comforting, only deepened her confusion. Potential for what? To be paraded around as his human trophy? To be a figurehead in a world she knew nothing about? A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Theron's face immediately hardened, the easy affection replaced by the familiar mask of the powerful ruler. "Enter," he commanded. A group of Lycans, clearly high-ranking members of his court, entered cautiously. They bowed respectfully to Theron, but their gazes lingered on Maya, a mixture of suspicion, curiosity and thinly veiled disdain. Lady Seraphina was among them, her expression a venomous cocktail of disbelief and fury. "High King," began an older, distinguished-looking Lycan, his tone carefully neutral. "We are surprised by your declaration. To claim a human from outside our kind as your fated mate, it is unprecedented. Many in the court will have questions. Then they will ask them directly," Theron replied, his voice a steel trap. He moved to Maya's side, placing a possessive hand on her waist, drawing her closer into his protective sphere. "But let me make this clear. My mate is my mate. Her lineage is irrelevant. Her status among my people is that of queen. Any who challenge this, challenge me." The unspoken threat hung heavy in the air. The older Lycan swallowed, his gaze flicking to Maya, then away. Lady Seraphina, however, was less easily deterred. "With all due respect, your majesty," she purred, her eyes raking over Maya's simple uniform with undisguised contempt. "A queen must be prepared. She must understand our customs, our alliances, our enemies. This woman, she is clearly unprepared. It could destabilize our entire realm." Maya felt a fresh wave of humiliation. She didn't need to be Lycan to understand the unspoken accusation. You are not worthy. She clenched her jaw, refusing to shrink under their collective scrutiny, even as her heart hammered. Theron's grip on her waist tightened, a silent reassurance. Then we will prepare her, he stated, his voice devoid of emotion, yet radiating an undeniable authority. I will prepare her. And any who seek to undermine her or question my choice will face the consequences. His golden eyes swept over the assembled Lycans, a silent warning that made even Lady Seraphina flinch. The Lycans exchanged uneasy glances. The message was clear. Challenge his mate, challenge the king. And challenging the Lycan King was a path to self-destruction. Maya, however, felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. His protection was a shield, but it also painted a target on her back. This new reality was not just about finding her mate. It was about navigating a treacherous court, filled with those who would clearly rather see her gone. Her journey had only just begun. Chapter 5. Whispers of the Past, Shadows of the Future. The Lycan delegation retreated, their faces a mixture of grudging acceptance and simmering resentment. Lady Seraphina cast one last scathing look at Maya before sweeping out, leaving behind a faint scent of expensive perfume and bitter disappointment. The silence that followed was heavy, fraught with unspoken challenges and the weight of a world Maya was only just beginning to comprehend. Theron released her, moving to the window once more, his back to her. His broad shoulders seemed to carry the weight of centuries. They will test you, he said, his voice a low rumble. They will try to break you. They will seek to prove you unworthy. Maya hugged herself, suddenly feeling exposed and vulnerable despite the luxurious surroundings. Why? Because I'm human? Because I spilled champagne on you. The last part came out with a hint of bitterness. He turned, a faint smile touching his lips. Partly because you are human, yes. Our kind has been isolated for so long and the idea of a human queen is unconventional. But mostly it is because you are mine. And anything that belongs to the king, especially his mate, becomes a target for those who seek to challenge my rule, or simply to gain power. He moved closer, his golden eyes intense. You are not just my fated mate, Maya. You are the key to fulfilling ancient prophecies that speak of the Lycan King's true mate emerging when our world stands on the precipice. There are those who believe your arrival signals not salvation but chaos. Maya's head spun. Prophecies? Chaos? King Theron, I make minimum wage. My biggest challenge before tonight was figuring out how to pay my electricity bill. I'm not equipped for this. She gestured vaguely at the opulent room, then at herself. I don't know anything about your world. Or prophecies. Or being a queen. He took her hand, his fingers strong and warm, intertwining with hers. A strange energy like a gentle hum flowed between them. Then I will teach you. I will show you. You will learn because you are strong, Maya. Stronger than you know. I felt it the moment our eyes met. A resilience, a fire within you that few possess. He led her to a plush velvet couch, urging her to sit. He sat beside her, maintaining the contact, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. Our world, the Lycan world, exists alongside yours, hidden in plain sight. We are bound by ancient laws and traditions. My family has ruled for millennia, protecting our kind, maintaining the balance between our world and yours. And these challenges? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. What are they? His jaw tightened, a shadow passing over his face. There are factions within our own kind who believe the time of the Lycan King is over. They seek to break away, to forge their own paths, often through violent means. There are also ancient enemies, those who seek to exploit our power, or to unleash forces best left undisturbed. Your arrival, a human mate for the king, is seen by some as a sign of weakness, an opportunity to strike. Maya felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Her life was suddenly not just complicated but dangerous. She was a pawn in a game she didn't understand, a game with potentially deadly stakes. And how do I fit into all this? She asked, her voice laced with fear. Theron turned to face her fully, his golden eyes unwavering. You are the anchor, Maya. The balance. The prophecy states that only the fated mate of the Lycan King can truly unite our fractured people and lead us into a new age. Your unique perspective, your human heart will be our strength. You will bridge the gap between our two vastly different lives and in doing so strengthen us all. His conviction was absolute, unshakable. It was a stark contrast to her own trembling uncertainty. She looked at their joined hands, then back at him. He was not just a powerful ruler. He was a man burdened by an ancient legacy, by the weight of his people's survival. And now she was inexplicably a part of it. I need time to understand, she confessed, feeling overwhelmed. This is too much. Time you shall have, he promised, his voice softening. But understand this, my queen. You are not alone. I am here. And I will protect you. I will teach you. And together we will face whatever challenges come our way. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. The touch sent another jolt through her, less shocking than before, more like a growing warmth, a gentle hum that resonated deep within her. It was a promise, a claim, and a subtle declaration of something new and terrifyingly profound stirring between them. Maya looked into his eyes, seeing not just the formidable king, but a glimpse of the man beneath, a man who saw something in her that no one else ever had. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was now mingled with a burgeoning sense of awe and a curious, undeniable fascination. Her mundane life had shattered, and in its place, a destiny she couldn't have imagined was rapidly unfolding, pulling her into a world of power, politics, and a love that defied all logic. The gala was over, but her true story had just begun. Chapter 6. A Gilded Cage. The days that followed Theron's declaration were a blur of bewildering luxury and stifling isolation. Maya found herself ensconced in the opulent suite, a gilded cage where every need was met, yet every ounce of her freedom felt stripped away. She was no longer Maya, the waitress with aspirations of a simple, stable life. She was the Lycan King's mate, his queen, a title that felt as heavy and ill-fitting as a crown. Her clothes were replaced by exquisite silks and velvets, outfits chosen for her by silent, efficient attendants who moved with an air of respectful distance. The food was divine, served on fine china, but she ate alone, the grand dining table feeling vast and empty without the comforting clatter of a busy diner. Every moment felt observed, even when no one was physically present. The air hummed with unseen eyes, the whispers of the court reaching even the highest tower. Theron visited her frequently, often late at night after fulfilling his kingly duties. He brought maps of ancient territories, scrolls detailing Lycan history, and endless explanations of their customs and laws. He spoke of the Lycan councils, the various pacts, the intricate web of alliances and feuds that governed their hidden world. Maya listened, feigning comprehension, but most of it swam in her head like an indecipherable language. It was a world of moon cycles, shifting forms, and primal instincts, utterly foreign to her own. This is the territory of the Blackwood Pack, he'd explain, tracing a line on a parchment with a strong finger. Their alpha, Gareth, is a proud and often stubborn Lycan. You will need to understand his temperament if you are to win his loyalty. Maya would nod, her gaze fixed on the intricate lines of the map, but her mind would drift to the bustling streets of her old neighborhood, the familiar scent of street food, the easy banter with her coworkers. Loyalty. Temperament. She just wanted to know how to order a pizza without a retinue of silent guards. The most challenging aspect was the overwhelming sense of not belonging. She was constantly aware of the stares, the whispers, the barely concealed disdain from the few Lycans she encountered in the halls. Lady Seraphina was a constant, icy presence, her visits thinly veiled attempts to undermine Maya's confidence, to highlight her perceived inadequacies. "My king, surely the queen requires lessons in comportment," Seraphina would suggest, her eyes sweeping over Maya's still human form with a condescending pity. "Perhaps a tutor in Lycan etiquette? It is a complex subject not easily grasped by outsiders." Theron, ever her protector, would cut her off with a sharp look. "Maya will learn at her own pace, Seraphina. And under my guidance." But even his protection couldn't erase the feeling of being judged, found wanting. Maya would retreat to the solitude of her suite, gazing out the window at the distant city lights, a poignant reminder of the life she'd lost. She felt like an exhibit, a curiosity placed under glass for observation. One afternoon, unable to bear the confinement any longer, Maya decided to explore. She slipped past her attendants during a shift change, her heart hammering with a desperate need for fresh air. She found herself in a sprawling, manicured garden, a verdant sanctuary that seemed to stretch for acres. The scent of roses and damp earth filled her lungs, a welcome change from the stale, opulent air of the palace. She wandered, following a winding stone path, until she stumbled upon a secluded grotto. A waterfall tumbled into a clear, shallow pool, surrounded by ancient, moss-covered stones. It was beautiful, peaceful. For a moment she allowed herself to forget her new reality, to simply breathe. Then a low growl echoed from the shadows. Maya froze, her blood turning to ice. A massive wolf, sleek and black as midnight, emerged from behind a cluster of ferns. Its eyes, burning gold, fixed on her. It wasn't just a wolf. It was a Lycan in its animal form, a creature of raw power and untamed wildness. She recognized the eyes instantly. Theron. He padded towards her, slowly, deliberately, his powerful frame radiating an almost hypnotic grace. He stopped mere inches from her, his breath warm against her cheek. She could feel the ripple of muscles beneath his thick fur, the latent power held in check. He was magnificent, terrifying, and utterly captivating. Theron, she whispered, her voice trembling. He nudged her hand with his nose, then licked her palm, a rough, surprisingly gentle gesture that sent a jolt of warmth through her. It was a primal connection, a silent affirmation that transcended words. In this form he seemed less king and more, simply Theron, her mate. He then lowered himself to the ground, laying his massive head in her lap, his golden eyes gazing up at her with an expression of profound affection and a hint of something else, a deep, primal need. In this moment, stripped of the trappings of kingship, he was simply a wolf, her wolf. Maya tentatively reached out, her fingers sinking into his thick, soft fur. It was an instinctive act, a natural response to his silent plea for contact. As she stroked his head, feeling the warmth of his body against hers, a sense of calm, of belonging finally settled over her. The gilded cage, the whispers, the fear, they all receded. In this intimate moment, nestled in the heart of the king's wild essence, Maya felt a fragile spark ignite within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, this world wasn't entirely devoid of solace. Chapter 7. A Taste of Power. The encounter in the grotto shifted something within Maya. The raw, primal connection she felt with Theron in his wolf form was a stark contrast to the formal, often intimidating interactions they shared as king and would-be queen. It was a glimpse behind the curtain, a moment of unadulterated intimacy that resonated deep within her, sparking a nascent sense of belonging. Theron seemed to sense this change. He became less rigid in his lessons, more attuned to her human nature. He began taking her on small excursions disguised into the fringes of their hidden world. He showed her ancient Lycan markets, bustling with unique wares and the scent of exotic spices, where Lycans and humans coexisted, unknowingly intertwined. "We have always been among you," he explained as they walked through a crowded street, her hand tucked firmly into the crook of his arm. "Our settlements are often on the edges of your cities, our businesses integrated into your own. It is how we survive, hidden from those who would fear or exploit us." Maya watched, fascinated, as a Lycan baker effortlessly lifted sacks of flour that would crush a human, or a Lycan merchant bartered with an intensity that bordered on fierce. She noticed the subtle differences, the glint of golden eyes, the heightened senses, the powerful, almost predatory grace in their movements. She was seeing the world through a new lens, one that was both exhilarating and terrifying. But these excursions were brief, always ending with their return to the palace and the watchful eyes of the court. The whispers, though quieter, still persisted. Lady Seraphina, in particular, remained a thorn in Maya's side, her veiled insults growing more pointed. "The king is too lenient," she would often remark, just loud enough for Maya to overhear. "Allowing a human to wander our sacred grounds, to mingle with our people. It is a dangerous precedent." One evening, during a formal dinner attended by several high-ranking Lycans, Seraphina launched a direct attack. "High King," she began, her voice dripping with false concern, "I worry about the Queen's preparedness. There is a diplomatic summit next month with the neighboring vampire coven. Such events require a keen understanding of ancient pacts, of delicate power dynamics. Has our Queen even begun to study these matters?" All eyes turned to Maya. She felt a familiar flush creep up her neck. She had indeed been studying, but the sheer volume of information was overwhelming, and her progress felt painfully slow. The Lycan history books were dense, filled with names and dates that blurred together. Theron's hand tightened subtly under the table, a silent warning for her to remain calm. Maya is making excellent progress, he stated, his voice even but with an underlying steel. Seraphina, however, pressed on, emboldened by Maya's visible discomfort. Progress, perhaps. But does she understand the nuances of the Blood Pact of 1452? The implications of the Shadowlands Treaty? Or the ancient rivalry between the Moonstone Pack and the Obsidian Clan? She paused, a smirk playing on her lips. Perhaps she could tell us, in her own words, what she believes to be the most pressing issue facing our Lycan kingdom today. The silence was deafening. Maya's mind raced, desperate for an answer, any answer. She could feel the weight of their scrutiny, the anticipation of her inevitable failure. A sudden, sharp anger flared within her. She was tired of being underestimated, of being treated as a fragile, ignorant human. She took a deep breath, meeting Seraphina's mocking gaze directly. The most pressing issue, Maya began, her voice surprisingly steady, is not the Blood Pact of 1452, nor the Shadowlands Treaty, which I am in fact studying. It is the schism within your own court. The constant infighting, the jealousy, the resistance to change even when that change is foretold by your own prophecies. A ripple of shock went through the assembled Lycans. Theron's eyes widened almost imperceptibly, a flicker of surprise and pride. You speak of unity, Maya continued, emboldened by the unexpected silence, yet you sow discord at your own king's table. You focus on what divides you rather than what could make you stronger. If the Lycan kingdom is truly facing its greatest challenges, then its greatest weakness lies not in a human queen, but in a court that refuses to look past ancient prejudices and embrace a future where all strengths, even unexpected ones, are valued. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the faces of the Lycans, daring them to contradict her. My understanding of your ancient treaties may be incomplete, she concluded, her voice unwavering, but my understanding of human nature and the destructive nature of division is not. And I believe that applies to any race. The silence this time was different. It wasn't just shock, it was a grudging respect. Even Seraphina's smirk had vanished, replaced by a look of stunned fury. Theron, after a moment, broke the spell. He rose from his seat, walked around the table and pulled out Maya's chair, helping her to stand. Then, in a move that shocked everyone, he brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles slowly, his golden eyes blazing with undisguised adoration. My queen speaks with wisdom and truth, he announced, his voice ringing with pride. Let her words be heard. Maya felt a surge of adrenaline, a heady rush of power unlike anything she had ever experienced. It wasn't just Theron's affirmation. It was the realization that her voice, her human perspective, held weight. She had stood her ground, and for the first time she truly felt like she belonged, not just as Theron's mate, but as a potential force in her own right. Chapter 8. The Hunt. The aftermath of Maya's unexpected declaration at dinner reverberated through the palace. The whispers didn't cease, but their tone shifted. There was less outright disdain, more cautious consideration. Even Lady Seraphina, though still glowering, kept her cutting remarks to herself for a few days. Maya, for her part, felt a newfound confidence bloom within her. She still had much to learn, but she had found her voice, a weapon more potent than she'd imagined. Theron, seeing this change, intensified her education, but with a different approach. Instead of just theoretical knowledge, he began involving her in practical aspects of Lycan life. One crisp autumn morning, he led her to a secluded part of the palace grounds, a dense forest that bordered the estate. Today, he announced, his golden eyes glinting with excitement, you will learn to hunt. Maya stared, her jaw dropping. Hunt? As in, kill an animal? She was a city girl. Her closest encounter with wildlife was a pigeon in the park. Not necessarily kill, he clarified, a smile playing on his lips. But to track, to understand the forest, to embrace your instincts. It is essential for a Lycan queen to understand the world from which her people come. And to be able to protect herself. He handed her a small, intricately carved wooden bow and a quiver of arrows. They were light, surprisingly comfortable in her hands. He then demonstrated how to hold it, how to draw the string, how to aim. His movements were fluid, precise, honed by centuries of practice. Feel the bow, he instructed, standing behind her, his large hands guiding hers. His breath ghosted over her ear, sending shivers down her spine. It is an extension of yourself. Become one with it. Hours were spent practicing. Maya was clumsy at first, her arrows flying wildly, missing targets by a wide margin. But Theron was patient, his guidance firm yet gentle. He taught her how to move silently through the undergrowth, how to read tracks, how to listen to the whispers of the wind and the rustling leaves. Your human senses are sharp, he murmured, his face close to hers as they stalked through the woods. But you must learn to rely on more than just sight and sound. You must learn to feel the forest, to anticipate. We Lycan sense shifts in the air, the vibrations of the earth. You can develop a version of that if you open yourself to it. As the afternoon wore on, Maya found herself surprisingly engrossed. The rhythm of the hunt, the quiet intensity, the focus required. It was a meditative experience. She was no longer just a waitress or a reluctant queen. She was a woman in the wild, learning to survive, to thrive. They tracked a small deer for what felt like hours, Theron a silent shadow beside her. He never interfered, only offered subtle corrections or encouraging nods. Maya's senses sharpened. She noticed the broken twig, the faint imprint of a hoof, the subtle shift in the wind that carried the deer's scent. Finally they cornered it in a clearing. The deer, startled, froze, its large eyes wide with fear. Maya drew her bow, her heart pounding. Her aim was true, her body surprisingly steady. She saw the arrow poised, ready to fly. Then she lowered the bow. Theron looked at her, his golden eyes questioning. Why? I can't, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. It's too beautiful. I don't need to kill it. A slow smile spread across Theron's face. A genuine, heartwarming smile that softened his formidable features. He stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. That is precisely why you are my queen, Maya. You understand the value of life, even when it means foregoing the kill. Compassion is a strength often underestimated. He then knelt, placing his hand on the earth. He closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, they glowed with a fierce, primal intensity. He murmured a few words in a guttural language Maya didn't understand, a blessing or a farewell to the deer. The deer, as if sensing the absence of threat, bolted, disappearing into the trees. The hunt is not always about the kill, Theron explained, rising. Sometimes, it is about the connection, the understanding, the respect for the cycle of life. You felt that today. As they walked back towards the palace, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and purple, Maya felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She hadn't killed anything, but she had learned, she had grown. She had touched something ancient within herself, something wild and untamed that resonated with Theron's own primal nature. She glanced at him, his profile silhouetted against the setting sun. He was a king, a Lycan, a powerful and ancient being. And he was teaching her, patiently, lovingly, to navigate not just his world, but her own burgeoning strength within it. The hunt had been about more than just tracking an animal. It had been about Maya discovering a deeper, more powerful part of herself. Chapter 9. Whispers of the Old Ways. The hunting lesson, though initially terrifying, had been transformative. Maya found herself feeling more connected to Theron and to this hidden world than ever before. Her senses felt sharper, her intuition more finely tuned. She began to notice things she hadn't before. The subtle scent of rain before it fell, the nuanced shifts in temperature, the almost imperceptible changes in people's moods. It was as if a part of her, long dormant, was finally awakening. Theron, observing her progress, decided it was time for her to meet the elders. The Lycan elders were the spiritual and historical keepers of their people, a council of the oldest and wisest Lycans, revered for their deep connection to the ancient ways. They rarely left their secluded mountain stronghold, and their approval was crucial for any significant change within the Lycan realm, especially one as radical as a human queen. They will assess you, Maya, Theron explained as they prepared for the journey. They will look into your spirit to see if you are truly the one foretold by prophecy. It will be challenging, but I have faith in you. The journey to the elders' stronghold was an experience in itself. They traveled by night, Theron in his powerful wolf form, running effortlessly through the forests, while Maya rode in a specially designed sturdy carriage, guarded by several Lycans in their shifting forms. The moon, a full luminous orb in the inky sky, seemed to watch over them, casting long eerie shadows. As they ascended the mountain, the air grew colder, thinner, filled with the scent of pine and ancient stone. The stronghold itself was a marvel, a fortress carved directly into the mountain face, camouflaged by trees and illusionary spells. It felt like stepping back in time, to an era untouched by modern civilization. They were led into a vast cavern, naturally lit by glowing crystals embedded in the rock walls. Seated in a semicircle on chairs carved from ancient wood and bone, were the elders. They were a diverse group, some frail with age, their fur streaked with white, others seemingly ageless, their eyes holding the weight of millennia. Their golden eyes, however, all held the same piercing intensity, fixed entirely on Maya. The lead elder, a female Lycan named Lyra, with a mane of silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies, spoke first. Her voice was raspy yet resonant, echoing through the cavern. So this is the human who claims to be the king's fated mate. The one who defies tradition, who walks between worlds. Maya felt a familiar flush of insecurity, but Theron's hand, resting lightly on the small of her back, was a silent anchor. She met Lyra's gaze directly. I don't claim to be anything, elder. It is the king who claimed me. And if it means defying tradition, then perhaps tradition needs to be reevaluated. A ripple of surprise went through the elders. Lyra's lips, thin with age, curled into a faint smile. Brave words, human. But bravery alone does not make a queen. Show us your spirit. Let us see the bond. One of the elders, a male with deep, scarred features, stepped forward. He held a small, polished stone, ancient and shimmering. He approached Maya, extending the stone towards her. Place your hand upon it, human. Let the stone feel your truth. Maya hesitated, then placed her hand on the cold, smooth surface of the stone. Immediately, a sensation unlike anything she'd ever experienced surged through her. It was as if her entire life, her memories, her emotions, her very essence, were being siphoned out of her, laid bare for the elders to see. It was invasive yet strangely illuminating. She saw flashes of her mundane life, her struggles, her moments of quiet joy. She saw the moment she spilled champagne on Theron, the lightning strike of their connection. She saw his golden eyes, heard his declaration. And then she saw images of a future she hadn't dared to dream of, Theron by her side. A powerful queen leading a united people, light battling shadows. When the elder withdrew the stone, Maya felt momentarily disoriented, breathless. She swayed slightly and Theron's arm immediately went around her, steadying her. Lyra nodded slowly. The stone does not lie. The bond is true. It burns with an ancient fire, stronger than any we have witnessed in generations. And her spirit, it holds both fierce resilience and profound compassion. She is indeed the one foretold. A collective sigh seemed to sweep through the cavern. The other elders murmured in approval, their gazes at Maya now tinged with reverence rather than suspicion. The weight of their approval was immense, almost physical. But the path ahead is fraught with peril, Lyra continued, her gaze turning to Theron. The shadows lengthen. Your claim to her will be challenged, not just by those within our own kind, but by ancient forces stirred by her very existence. She is a beacon, King Theron, and beacons attract both hope and despair. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. The elder's words were a warning, a prophecy of struggles yet to come. Her life was no longer just about adapting to being a queen. It was about preparing for a battle she couldn't yet fathom. The elder's approval was a victory, but it was also a heavy burden, a promise of a destiny that would demand everything from her. Chapter 10. The Serpent in the Garden. The elder's blessing was a powerful affirmation, not just for Maya and Theron, but for the entire Lycan court. News of their pronouncement spread quickly, silencing many of the dissenting voices. Maya's status was no longer a matter of debate. It was now decreed by ancient authority. A fragile peace settled over the palace, but beneath the surface, Maya felt the subtle shifts, the watchful eyes, the undercurrent of resentment that still lingered in certain corners. Her training intensified. Theron introduced her to the rudiments of Lycan politics, explaining the intricate dance of alliances and rivalries among the packs. He assigned her tutors in Lycan history, ancient languages, and even self-defense, a series of fluid, powerful movements that felt surprisingly natural to her awakened senses. She was a quick study, fueled by a desire to prove herself, not just to the court but to herself. She spent hours in the palace library surrounded by dusty tomes and ancient scrolls, devouring every piece of information she could find. She learned about the history of the Blood Pact of 1452, the Shadowlands Treaty, and the ancient rivalry between the Moonstone Pack and the Obsidian Clan, the very topics Lady Seraphina had used to try and shame her. Now she understood their significance, the delicate balance of power they represented. Theron was immensely proud of her progress, his golden eyes often alight with admiration as she recited forgotten lore or debated a complex political strategy. Their bond deepened, growing into a comfortable intimacy that transcended their royal roles. He trusted her, confided in her, and Maya found herself falling deeper into an affection for this powerful ancient king who saw not a waitress but a queen. However, not everyone accepted the elder's decree. Lady Seraphina, though outwardly respectful, continued to exude an aura of barely suppressed hostility. Her attempts to undermine Maya became more subtle, more insidious. Little accidents began to happen. A glass of water accidentally spilled on a crucial document Maya was studying, a book of ancient spells misplaced just before a lesson, a whispered rumor about Maya's unsuitability, reaching the ears of impressionable young Lycans. Maya, however, was no longer the meek waitress she had been. Her heightened senses allowed her to notice the small details, the lingering scent of Seraphina's perfume near the misplaced items, the way certain servants avoided her gaze after a fresh rumor circulated. She observed, she learned, and she began to build a mental map of the loyalties and animosities within the court. One afternoon, Maya was in the palace gardens, practicing her self-defense forms with a Lycan warrior named Kale. Kale was a gruff but loyal Lycan, assigned as one of her personal guards, and he had a no-nonsense approach to training that Maya appreciated. "Keep your core tight, queen," he instructed, demonstrating a block. "You rely on speed, not brute strength. Anticipate." As they trained, Seraphina appeared, accompanied by a small retinue of her loyalists. She watched from a distance, a sneer playing on her lips. "Such a vigorous display," she purred, her voice carrying on the breeze. "One might almost forget the queen is still, at heart, a fragile human. What hope does she have against true adversaries?" Maya paused, her stance unwavering. Kale tensed, his hand instinctively going to the dagger at his hip. "My hope," Maya replied, her voice calm and clear, "lies in my will to learn, Lady Seraphina, and in the strength of those who stand by me." She glanced pointedly at Kale, whose chest puffed out slightly. Seraphina merely smiled, a cold, predatory baring of teeth. A brave sentiment, but perhaps a queen should not rely solely on others. What if, for example, she found herself alone? Her eyes darted to a hidden alcove in the garden. Maya felt a prickle of unease. There was something in Seraphina's tone, a veiled threat that set her awakened senses on edge. She instinctively scanned the garden, her gaze lingering on the shadows of the alcove Seraphina had indicated. Later that evening, Theron was called away to an urgent meeting with his generals. Maya, feeling restless, decided to take a walk in the gardens, the fresh air a welcome respite from the palace's stifling grandeur. She felt confident. The gardens were always well guarded and Kale was never far. As she passed the secluded grotto where she had first connected with Theron in his wolf form, a sudden sharp pain lanced through her ankle. She gasped, stumbling, and collapsed to the ground. A small venomous serpent, its scales a dull green, slithered away into the undergrowth. A tiny, almost invisible puncture mark bled faintly on her skin. Panic seized her. Her training had taught her how to fight, but not against poison. Her vision blurred, a wave of dizziness washing over her. She tried to call out, but her throat felt constricted, her voice caught. From the shadows of the grotto, Lady Seraphina emerged, her face illuminated by the moonlight, a look of triumph twisting her features. "Such a shame," she murmured, her voice laced with venom. "A simple accident. A common garden snake. Who would have thought the great human queen could be brought down by something so insignificant?" Maya stared up at her, a chilling realization dawning. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. This was Seraphina's attempt to eliminate her, to prove her weakness, to remove the serpent from her garden. As darkness encroached on her vision, Maya knew with a horrifying certainty that the true battles for her throne and her life had only just begun. Chapter 11. the venom and the bond. The world swam around Maya, colors blurring into sickly hues, sounds fading into a distant drone. The venom, swift and potent, coursed through her veins, a burning ice that stole her strength and clouded her mind. She could hear Seraphina's chilling laughter, feel the cold ground beneath her and taste the coppery tang of fear. This was it, she thought, a pathetic end to her brief, bewildering reign, brought down by a garden snake orchestrated by a jealous rival. Such a pity, Seraphina's voice, though distorted, still dripped with malicious satisfaction. The king will be devastated, of course. But he will find another mate. A true Lycan queen. Maya tried to move to fight, but her limbs felt like lead. Her vision narrowed to Seraphina's sneering face, a grotesque mask of triumph. She heard faint footsteps, the rustling of leaves, but they were too far away, too late. Then a growl. Furious. A sound that vibrated through the very earth, shaking Maya to her core. It wasn't the distant rumble of thunder. It was the enraged roar of a predator unleashed. Theron. He burst from the treeline, a blur of dark fur and molten gold eyes. He was in his full wolf form, larger and more terrifying than Maya had ever seen him. His transformation was incomplete, shimmering in and out, revealing flashes of human skin beneath the fur, a testament to the sheer, unbridled fury that consumed him. The air around him crackled with raw power. Seraphina, for all her bravado, gasped, her triumphant expression dissolving into sheer terror. She knew the king's wrath, and it was legendary. Before she could even scream, Theron was on her, not attacking but cornering her with a terrifying display of dominance. He snarled, his fangs bared, a low growl rumbling in his chest that promised unimaginable pain if she moved. His golden eyes, blazing with lethal intent, fixed on her. He then turned his attention to Maya, his large wolf head nudging her, whimpering softly. He recognized the venom, the spreading pallor of her skin. He let out another mournful, enraged howl, a sound that spoke of desperation and fierce love. Suddenly he shifted. The transformation was swift, violent, his fur receding, muscles contracting, until he stood over her, half-shifted, primal and powerful. He tore at his shirt, revealing a powerful chest, and then without hesitation he bit into his own forearm, drawing blood. Maya watched, mesmerized by the sheer intensity of his actions, even as her body failed her. He pressed his bleeding arm to her lips, forcing a few drops of his blood into her mouth. It was warm, metallic, and immediately, a jolt of strange energy coursed through her. It felt like fire and ice, burning away the venom, replacing the encroaching darkness with a brilliant golden light. The Lycan blood, ancient and potent, surged through her human veins, fighting the poison. The pain receded, the dizziness lessened, replaced by a tingling warmth that spread from her core outward. Her vision cleared, focusing on Theron's face, etched with worry and fierce determination. "My blood," he rasped, his voice raw with emotion, still half-growl. "It will fight the venom. It will save you." He cradled her head in his lap, his hand gently stroking her hair. Seraphina, who had watched the entire scene with a horrified fascination, slowly began to back away, her face ashen. "You," Theron snarled, his golden eyes blazing at her. You dare harm my mate." His voice was low, deadly. "This transgression will not be forgiven. Your betrayal will be met with the full force of my judgment." Seraphina stammered, trying to deny it, but her terrified expression was all the confession needed. Theron's security detail, drawn by his earlier roar, finally arrived, their faces grim as they took in the scene: a semi-conscious queen, a venomous snake, and a terrified Lady Seraphina. "Take her," Theron commanded, his voice shaking with barely suppressed rage. "To the deepest dungeon. No one is to speak to her. She will await my judgment." As Seraphina was dragged away, still protesting feebly, Theron held Maya close. The residual effects of the venom slowly faded, replaced by a lingering weakness, but also a new, strange energy humming beneath her skin. His blood, she realized, had done more than just fight the poison. It had bound them, deepened their connection, fused their essences in a way she hadn't anticipated. He was still half-shifted, his golden eyes filled with an intensity that promised both vengeance and fierce, unwavering protection. "Never again," he whispered, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "No one will ever harm you again, my queen." I swear it. And in his embrace, despite the lingering fear and the pain of betrayal, Maya felt a profound sense of security. She had faced death, and Theron had pulled her back not just with his power, but with a sacrifice that spoke of a love far deeper than any story she had ever read. Chapter 12. A Deeper Bond. The days following the attack were a blur of recovery and revelation. Maya spent most of her time in bed, cared for by a team of Lycan healers whose ancient remedies smelled of herbs and damp earth. The physical effects of the venom gradually receded, but the lingering presence of Theron's blood in her veins was undeniable. It wasn't just that she felt stronger, more resilient. It was something deeper, a subtle shift in her perception. Her senses, already heightened since arriving at the palace, became even more acute. She could hear the rustle of leaves in the distant forest, the faint heartbeat of a bird outside her window, the almost imperceptible scent of fear or contentment on those who entered her room. But the most profound change was her connection to Theron. It was as if a new thread had been woven into their already undeniable bond. She could feel his emotions, his lingering worry, his simmering anger towards Seraphina, his quiet joy when she showed signs of recovery. And sometimes in the quiet moments she could almost hear his thoughts, a faint echo in her mind. Theron was a constant presence by her side, his golden eyes never leaving her, a silent sentinel against any further harm. He rarely left her chamber, conducting his affairs from a temporary study set up adjacent to her room. His rage over Seraphina's betrayal was a palpable force, humming beneath his controlled exterior. "The council awaits my judgment on Seraphina," he told her one evening, his voice tight with barely suppressed fury. "Many demand a swift and harsh punishment. Execution, some suggest." Maya, though still weak, felt a flicker of unease. Seraphina deserved punishment, yes, but death? Is that truly necessary? She asked, her voice raspy. Theron turned to her, his expression a storm of conflicting emotions. "She attempted to murder my mate, Maya. My fated queen. Such an act is an unforgivable offense in our world. It threatens the very stability of our bloodline, of our future." "I understand her crime," Maya said, her gaze steady. "And I know she meant me harm. But if she is killed, won't it just create more resentment? More division? There are others who supported her who disliked my presence. What message would it send?" Theron stared at her, a thoughtful expression replacing the anger in his eyes. He saw not just her human compassion, but her innate understanding of power dynamics, of consequences beyond immediate retribution. "You think of the greater good even when you have been directly harmed. A queen mustn't she?" Maya managed a faint smile. "If I am to unite your people, I can't start by alienating half your court through vengeance. Punishment, yes. But it must be a punishment that serves your kingdom, not just your anger." He knelt beside her bed, taking her hand. His golden eyes, filled with a mixture of awe and profound love, met hers. "You truly are the one, my queen. Your human heart guides you to wisdom my ancient instincts sometimes overlook." He leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "She will not be executed. But she will be stripped of all titles, all power, and exiled from the Lycan lands. Forever. No pack will take her. No Lycan will aid her. She will live out her days in complete isolation, a constant reminder of the consequences of betraying her king." Maya closed her eyes, a sigh of relief escaping her. It was a harsh punishment, but it was just. And it was a punishment that, as Theron had said, served the kingdom by eliminating a threat without creating a martyr. Over the next few days, as Maya continued to recover, she found herself not only physically healing but emotionally blooming. The fear that had initially gripped her began to recede, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. She was no longer just a spectator in this grand, terrifying drama. She was an active participant, a queen in the making, and with Theron by her side she felt capable of facing anything. One evening, as the moon cast its silvery glow through her window, Theron sat by her bedside, holding her hand. "You have changed, Maya," he murmured, his gaze tracing the contours of her face. "The venom, my blood, it has awakened something within you. A potential you already possessed, now fully realized." "I feel it," she confessed, her voice soft. "It's like a humming beneath my skin. And I can feel you, Theron. Your emotions, sometimes even your thoughts." His golden eyes glowed. "The bond has deepened. Our souls are more intertwined than ever. Soon perhaps you will even be able to shift. Maya's eyes widened. Shift? Into a wolf. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. He nodded, a gentle smile on his face. It is part of your destiny, my queen. To embrace your Lycan half, to walk fully between both worlds. And when you do, our connection will be complete. As she drifted to sleep that night, nestled in the protective aura of her Lycan king, Maya dreamt not of fear or escape, but of vast forests, of the thrilling chase of the hunt, and of running beside a magnificent black wolf under the glow of a full moon. Her destiny was no longer a burden. It was a thrilling, powerful invitation. Chapter 13, Bridging Worlds. With Seraphina exiled and Maya's recovery complete, a tangible shift occurred in the court. The lingering doubts and open animosity began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious respect. The elder's pronouncement, coupled with Theron's fierce protection and Maya's display of both courage and compassion, had cemented her place as queen. Maya, however, was keenly aware that respect was not yet love or full acceptance. Her goal was not just to survive, but to truly unite the Lycan people as the prophecy foretold. And that meant bridging the gap between her human nature and their ancient, primal world. Her training continued, becoming more intense and focused. Theron dedicated himself to her education, spending hours explaining the intricacies of Lycan history, the delicate balance of their ecosystem, and the unique challenges faced by each of the different packs. He taught her about their ceremonies, their celebrations, their sacred places. He also pushed her physically. Kale, her grim-faced but increasingly loyal guard, became her constant companion, teaching her advanced self-defense techniques that utilized her human agility and her developing enhanced senses. She learned to fight with a ferocity she never knew she possessed, her movements becoming fluid, almost instinctual. But it wasn't just about physical prowess. Maya understood that to be a true queen she needed to connect with the Lycan people on a deeper level. She began attending pack meetings, sitting by Theron's side, listening intently as alphas presented their concerns, their disputes, their requests. At first she remained silent, absorbing the information, observing the dynamics. Then slowly, tentatively she began to offer her perspective. She didn't speak with ancient wisdom or primal authority. She spoke with the clear, logical mind of a human, offering solutions that sometimes surprised the Lycans with their simplicity and effectiveness. Alpha Rorik, she suggested during a debate about land disputes between two rival packs. If the hunting grounds are so contentious, why not establish a rotating schedule? Or consider cultivating a new area, a dedicated space for sustainable growth, rather than constantly fighting over finite resources. The alphas, initially taken aback by her interjection, would often pause, considering her words. Theron, always by her side, would offer a nod of encouragement, silently signaling his approval. These interactions, combined with her continued compassionate approach, slowly began to chip away at the remaining prejudices. The Lycans saw her not just as the king's mate, but as a queen who genuinely cared for their well-being, who sought solutions rather than simply asserting authority. One particular instance solidified her growing influence. A small remote pack was suffering from a blight that threatened their crops, their primary food source. The elders, steeped in ancient traditions, suggested a series of rituals to appease the spirits of the land. Maya, however, remembered her human education. Have you tried analyzing the soil? Perhaps it's a specific fungus or a nutrient deficiency. We could send for a human expert discreetly to study it. The suggestion was met with skepticism even from Theron. Our ways are ancient, Maya. We rely on our connection to the land, not human science. But sometimes, Maya countered gently, ancient wisdom and modern knowledge can work together. We don't have to choose one or the other. If the spirits are truly displeased, perhaps it's because the land itself is suffering, and a human's understanding of its biology could help us heal it. Theron, after some deliberation, agreed to her suggestion. A trusted human botanist was secretly brought in. Within weeks, the cause of the blight was identified. A simple fungal infection and a natural, non-toxic remedy was implemented. The crops recovered. The pack was saved. The grateful alpha of that pack came personally to the palace, bowing deeply before Maya. "My queen," he said, his voice thick with emotion, You have shown us that true strength lies not just in power but in open-mindedness. You have saved my people. Our loyalty is yours." Theron watched, a proud smile on his face. He knew, as did Maya, that this was more than just a single pack's loyalty. It was a turning point. Maya was not just claiming her throne, she was earning it one bridge at a time. The Lycan world, once so resistant to her presence, was slowly but surely beginning to embrace its human queen. Chapter 14. The Growing Shadow. As Maya's influence within the Lycan court grew, so too did her understanding of the world's true dangers. The ease with which she navigated pact disputes and introduced new perspectives did not translate to the external threats looming on the horizon. The Elder's warning of ancient forces stirred by her very existence began to manifest in subtle, unsettling ways. Reports from the fringes of Lycan territory became increasingly disturbing. Border patrols reported strange sightings, grotesque, twisted creatures not quite Lycan, not quite human, lurking in the shadows. Small, isolated human villages, once protected by Lycan vigilance, began to suffer from inexplicable attacks, livestock mutilated, whispers of shadows that stole breath and souls. Theron grew increasingly grim, his golden eyes often clouded with worry. He spent more time in war councils with his alphas, the air in the strategy room heavy with tension and the scent of primal fear. He often returned to Maya late at night, his face etched with exhaustion, but he always sought solace in her presence, finding a quiet strength in her unwavering support. "The balance is shifting, Maya," he confessed one night, holding her close as she lay in bed. "Your arrival, the deepening of our bond, it has sent ripples through the ancient powers. Those who dwell in the shadows, who feed on chaos and discord, are stirring. They sense an opportunity." "Who are these forces?" Maya asked, her voice laced with trepidation. She had read about ancient enemies in the Lycan texts, but they had always felt like distant myths, not immediate threats. "They are the Shadow Kin," Theron explained, his voice low and guttural. "Creatures born of forgotten magic and raw malevolence. They seek to corrupt, to destroy, to unravel the very fabric of existence. For centuries our kind has kept them at bay, but their power grows with every conflict, every doubt, every flicker of despair." He paused, a dark shadow passing over his face. "And there are rumors they seek to claim you, my queen. To corrupt your human spirit, to twist your potential for unity into a tool for chaos." A cold dread settled in Maya's stomach. To be a beacon was one thing, to be a target for forces of pure malevolence was another. The weight of her new role, the immense responsibility, pressed down on her. The signs grew more ominous. Lycan scouts began disappearing without a trace. Ancient wards, protecting crucial Lycan strongholds, started to falter, their magic weakening inexplicably. Even within the palace there was a growing sense of unease. Shadows seemed to lengthen, the air grew colder in certain corridors, and faint, unsettling whispers could sometimes be heard on the edges of hearing. One afternoon, Maya was meditating in the secluded grotto where she had first connected with Theron's wolf form. She was trying to harness her enhanced senses, to listen to the natural rhythms of the earth as Theron had taught her. She closed her eyes, focusing on the gentle trickle of the waterfall, the rustle of leaves. Suddenly, a voice, not a physical sound but a cold, insidious whisper in her mind, slithered into her consciousness. "Join us, little queen. Your human heart understands true power. The king offers you a gilded cage. We offer you true dominion." Maya gasped, her eyes snapping open. The grotto, once a place of peace, now felt suffocating, filled with an unseen presence. She scrambled to her feet, her heart hammering. "He uses you, human. He fears your power. But we will unlock it. We will make you truly strong." The voice was seductive, promising, yet laced with an undeniable malice. "Who are you?" Maya demanded, her voice trembling, scanning the empty grotto. The whisper chuckled, a sound like dry leaves skittering across stone. "We are the shadows, and we are coming for you." A wave of intense cold washed over her, making her teeth chatter. She felt a profound sense of despair, a paralyzing fear that threatened to consume her. This wasn't just a political struggle. This was a war for her soul, for the very essence of her being. She fled the grotto, running back towards the palace, her enhanced senses screaming warnings. She burst into Theron's study, breathless and pale. "They're here," she gasped, clutching his arm. The Shadowkin. I felt them. They spoke to me. Theron's face immediately hardened, his golden eyes glowing with a protective fury. He pulled her into a fierce embrace, holding her tight. They are testing you, my queen. Trying to break your spirit. But they will not succeed. He looked at her, his gaze unwavering. This is why you are here, Maya. This is why the prophecy called for you. You have a choice. To succumb to their darkness or to fight. And I know which choice you will make. Maya looked into his resolute eyes, feeling the warmth of his embrace, the strength of his conviction. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was now mingled with a fierce determination. She was no longer just a waitress or a reluctant queen. She was a warrior, a beacon in the encroaching darkness, and she would not let the shadows claim her or her king. Chapter 15. An Unlikely Alliance. The incident in the grotto solidified the palpable threat of the Shadowkin. Theron and his council no longer spoke of rumors, but of confirmed incursions. The atmosphere in the palace shifted from cautious respect to a grim resolve. Maya's personal guards were doubled and ancient wards were reinforced around her chambers. The war, for it was undeniably a war, had begun. Maya, far from shrinking from the danger, found a steely resolve hardening within her. The whisper of the Shadowkin had not broken her. It had ignited a fierce, protective fire. She was no longer just learning to be a queen. She was learning to be a leader in wartime. She spent more time in the war room, absorbing strategy, offering her insights. Her unique perspective, unclouded by centuries of Lycan tradition, often provided a fresh angle. She questioned long-held assumptions, challenged established tactics, and pushed for innovative solutions. We cannot fight shadows with brute force alone, she argued during one tense council meeting. They feed on despair, on division. Our strongest weapon against them is unity. If we truly want to defeat them, we must first unite all races, not just our own. The suggestion was met with stunned silence. The Lycans, proud and insular, rarely sought alliances with other supernatural beings, let alone humans. Their history was rife with conflicts and betrayals. An alliance with whom, Queen? Alpha Gareth, still gruff but now respectful, finally asked. The vampires? Our ancient enemies? They have their own darkness to contend with. Perhaps, Maya conceded, her gaze steady. But their darkness is different. And their power is undeniable. The Shadowkin threaten all of us. If we do not stand together, we will fall separately. Theron, who had been listening intently, finally spoke. She has a point. Our isolation has served us well for centuries, but this enemy is unlike any we have faced. It calls for extraordinary measures. This radical idea sparked intense debate among the alphas, but Maya's growing credibility, combined with Theron's support, swayed them. A delegation, led by Theron and accompanied by Maya, was dispatched to the court of the neighboring vampire coven, a realm historically at odds with the Lycans. The journey was fraught with tension. Maya had read about vampires, their ancient power, their aristocratic pride, their inherent disdain for Lycans. She knew this would be her toughest diplomatic test yet. The vampire coven's stronghold was a Gothic masterpiece, dark and imposing, a stark contrast to the natural beauty of the Lycan palace. They were led into a grand hall, illuminated by flickering candlelight, where the vampire king, a regal and impossibly ancient being named Marius, awaited them. He sat on a throne of black marble, his skin pale as alabaster, his eyes, crimson and piercing, fixed on Maya. King Theron, Marius greeted, his voice a silken purr that sent shivers down Maya's spine. To what do we owe the unexpected pleasure of your presence and that of your human companion? His gaze lingered on Maya, a predatory curiosity in his crimson eyes. Theron, ever protective, placed a reassuring hand on Maya's back. King Marius, we come not as enemies, but as emissaries seeking an alliance against a common foe. The Shadowkin are stirring. They threaten both our realms. Marius merely leaned back, a faint, cynical smile playing on his lips. The Shadowkin are a nuisance, King Theron. Our wards hold firm. Why should we concern ourselves with your petty squabbles? It was Maya who spoke next, stepping slightly forward, her voice clear and strong. Because, King Marius, the Shadowkin do not discriminate. They corrupt Lycan and human alike. And if they succeed in unraveling the fabric of one realm, yours will not be far behind. They seek to turn light into darkness and chaos into dominion. Your ancient power alone will not protect you from that. Marius's crimson eyes narrowed, his casual demeanor replaced by a flicker of grudging respect. Bold words, human. But what can a mere mortal know of such ancient evils? I know that the Shadowkin spoke to me, Maya revealed, her voice steady despite the fear. They tried to corrupt me. And I know that their whispers prey on doubt, on fear, on division. The greatest weakness of any race is its inability to stand united against a common enemy. If our two peoples who have battled for centuries cannot set aside our prejudices now, then we are truly lost. Marius stared at her, a long, piercing gaze that seemed to strip away her defenses, to peer into her very soul. He saw her conviction, her burgeoning strength, the fierce light in her human eyes. He saw the truth in her words. Finally he spoke, his voice no longer a purr but a deep, resonant rumble. Perhaps there is wisdom in the words of this human queen. The Shadowkin, they are a threat that transcends our ancient grievances. He rose from his throne, his tall, elegant form radiating power. He extended a pale hand to Theron. An alliance, King Theron. For the duration of this war. For the survival of all our kind. Theron grasped his hand firmly, their opposing powers clashing for a moment before settling into a grudging truce. Maya watched, a wave of relief washing over her. She had done it. She had bridged one of the oldest, deepest divides. As they left the vampire stronghold, walking into the cool night air, Theron turned to her, his golden eyes filled with pride and something akin to awe. You are truly remarkable, my queen. You have achieved what no king before me could. You have forged an alliance that could save us all. Maya smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. The shadow was growing, the war was imminent, but for the first time she felt not just fear but hope. Hope born of unity, hope born of an unlikely alliance, and hope born of the strength that she, the former waitress, was slowly but surely awakening within herself. Chapter 16. The Gathering Storm. The alliance with the vampires, though tenuous and fraught with ancient mistrust, brought a fragile sense of hope. Maya, now a central figure in the unified war council, worked tirelessly to foster cooperation between the two historically antagonistic races. It was a delicate dance, each meeting filled with simmering tension and thinly veiled barbs, but Theron and Marius, with Maya's steady mediation, managed to maintain a fragile truce. Reports from the front lines, however, grew increasingly dire. The Shadowkin were not a conventional army. They were a creeping corruption, seeping into the land, infecting the minds of the vulnerable, turning allies against each other. They manifested as shifting forms of darkness, feeding on fear and doubt, growing stronger with every act of discord. Lycan scouts reported entire human villages swallowed by shadows, their inhabitants vanishing without a trace. Vampire patrols spoke of ancient pacts being broken, of their own kind being lured into the darkness by seductive promises of ultimate power. The threat was pervasive, insidious, and terrifyingly effective. Maya, with her heightened senses, began to experience the Shadowkin's influence even within the relative safety of the palace. Faint whispers would prick at the edges of her mind, playing on her deepest insecurities. You are still just a human. You don't belong here. They will turn on you. She fought them fiercely, drawing on Theron's unwavering love and her own burgeoning strength, but the constant mental assault was exhausting. Theron too felt the pressure. His ancient instincts, usually so clear, were sometimes clouded by the pervasive negativity the Shadowkin emanated. He relied heavily on Maya's human perspective, her ability to see through the psychological warfare and focus on tangible solutions. They seek to divide us, Maya reiterated at a tense council meeting, her gaze sweeping over the Lycan alphas and vampire strategists. They want us to turn on each other. Our unity, however fragile, is our strongest shield. She presented a daring strategy. A unified front, combining Lycan strength and tracking abilities with vampire stealth and ancient knowledge of dark magic. They would not just defend, they would seek out the Shadowkin's nexus, the source of their growing power, and sever it. Marius, his crimson eyes gleaming, finally agreed. A bold plan, Queen Maya. Risky but perhaps our only chance. The intelligence we have gathered points to an ancient breach in the veil between worlds, deep within the Shadowlands. It is there we believe that their influence originates. The Shadowlands. A place of legend, whispered about in hushed tones even among the Lycans and vampires. A realm of perpetual twilight, where the fabric of reality was thin and malevolent entities roamed freely. It was a suicide mission, but the alternative was a slow, agonizing defeat. The chosen few gathered. Theron in his powerful Lycan form, Marius, sleek and deadly, a small elite contingent of Lycan warriors and vampire strategists. Maya. You should stay here, my queen, Theron pleaded, his golden eyes filled with worry. The Shadowlands are too dangerous. Your role is vital but not on the front lines of this particular battle. Maya met his gaze, her own eyes alight with determination. My place is by your side, Theron. I am your mate, your queen. And the Shadowkin seek to corrupt my spirit. I will face them. Besides, she added, a hint of steel in her voice, my human mind, unclouded by ancient animosities, might see something you miss. My senses are now enhanced. I can feel them. And I am a beacon, remember? Perhaps I can draw them out. Theron knew arguing was futile. Her conviction was absolute. He simply nodded, his hand finding hers, a silent promise of protection and shared destiny. As they stood on the precipice of the Shadowlands, the air growing thick with an oppressive chill, Maya looked at her reflection in a puddle. The human waitress was gone. In her place stood a queen, adorned not with jewels but with courage, wisdom and an unwavering resolve. The storm was gathering and she was ready to face it, not just for Theron but for all who lived in the light. Chapter 17. Into the Shadowlands. The moment they crossed the threshold into the Shadowlands, the world shifted. Colors faded, sound became muffled and a profound, pervasive cold seeped into Maya's bones. The air was thick with despair, a heavy, cloying presence that pressed down on her, trying to snuff out her hope. The whispers, once faint, now grew louder, insidious voices promising pain, tempting her with false power, playing on every hidden fear. Theron, in his wolf form, was a magnificent, terrifying sight. His fur seemed to absorb the encroaching darkness, and his golden eyes glowed with an internal fire, cutting through the gloom. Marius, a ghostly figure in the twilight, moved with an eerie silence, his crimson eyes scanning the shifting shadows. The landscape itself was a nightmare. Twisted trees with skeletal branches clawing at the sky, rivers of black ichor flowing sluggishly through barren valleys and grotesque half-formed creatures scuttling just at the periphery of vision. This was a place of pure malevolence, a festering wound in the fabric of reality. Maya, armed with a silver-bladed dagger Theron had given her and her rapidly evolving senses, stayed close to her king. The Lycan blood in her veins pulsed with a strange energy, fighting against the oppressive atmosphere, creating a small bubble of warmth within the pervasive cold. The Shadowkin attacked in waves, not with physical force, but with a terrifying psychological assault. They manifested as shifting forms, illusions of loved ones twisted into monstrous caricatures, whispering doubts, trying to fracture the unity of the group. One particular Shadowkin focused on Maya, manifesting as a distorted image of her younger self, frail and afraid, surrounded by the judging faces of the Lycan court. You are weak, Maya. You are a fraud. The king will abandon you. Maya faltered, the familiar pangs of insecurity threatening to overwhelm her. But then she felt Theron's presence, a warmth radiating from him, a silent reassurance. She closed her eyes, drawing on that bond, on the love that had sustained her. I am not weak, she declared, her voice ringing with unexpected power in the oppressive silence. I am Maya, queen of the Lycans, mate of the king, and I will not fall to your lies. The illusion flickered, momentarily dissolving under the force of her will. Marius, observing her, gave a rare, almost imperceptible nod of approval. They pressed deeper into the Shadowlands, following Marius's ancient knowledge, guided by the intensifying feeling of dread and corruption. The air grew heavier, the whispers louder, almost deafening. Suddenly, a massive, swirling vortex of pure shadow appeared before them, churning malevolently, spitting out smaller, formless entities that lunged at the group. This was the nexus, the breach. This is it, Theron rumbled, shifting back to his human form, his Lycan power crackling around him. His face was a mask of grim determination. The source of their corruption. We must close it. The Shadowkin surged forward, no longer just whispers, but tangible forms of darkness, trying to overwhelm them. The battle was fierce, a brutal clash of light and shadow, Lycan claws and vampire fangs against the consuming darkness. Maya found herself fighting with a ferocity she never knew possible. The silver dagger felt like an extension of her arm, carving through the shadowy forms, which hissed and dissolved upon contact. Her enhanced senses allowed her to anticipate their moves, to react with lightning speed. The Lycan blood within her roared, urging her on, filling her with a primal strength. She fought by Theron's side, a seamless unit. He protected her, and she in turn found ways to defend him against the insidious psychological attacks the Shadowkin directed at him, using her developing mental connection to shore up his defenses. Marius and his vampires fought with cold, efficient precision, their ancient dark magic a potent weapon against the Shadowkin. The ground shook, the air screamed with the agony of dissolving shadows, but the nexus remained, drawing power, growing larger. It feeds on our despair. Maya yelled over the din of battle, her voice raw. It grows stronger with our fear. We must fight with hope, with unity. Theron looked at her, then back at the swirling vortex. How, my queen? We must close it from within. Maya declared, a terrifying, exhilarating realization dawning on her. It's a breach between worlds. It needs balance. It needs life. We must project our hope, our unity, our bond into it. Theron's golden eyes widened. It was a dangerous, unprecedented idea. But it was the only way. Their lives and the fate of all worlds now rested on a human waitress and her Lycan king, stepping into the very heart of darkness. Chapter 18. The Heart of Darkness. The plan was insane, suicidal, but with the Shadowkin nexus growing in power, it was their only chance. Theron and Marius understood the gravity of Maya's suggestion. To close the breach, they needed to project not just physical power, but the very essence of their unified hope and bond into the heart of the darkness. It will be dangerous, Maya, Theron warned, his voice heavy with concern as they stood before the swirling vortex. It will try to consume you, to corrupt your spirit. I cannot guarantee your safety. I know, she replied, her hand finding his, her gaze unwavering. But I will not let it win. Not while you and our people need me. Marius, for his part, offered a rare gesture of solidarity. We will create a protective barrier around you both, a combined Lycan vampire magic, to shield you for as long as we can. But the core, that is yours, King Theron. And yours, Queen Maya. With a nod, Theron transformed into his full wolf form, magnificent and terrifying. He nudged Maya, a silent command for her to climb onto his back. She did, gripping his thick fur, feeling the immense power rippling beneath her. Marius and the other warriors formed a tight circle, their combined magic beginning to weave a shimmering, pulsating barrier around them. Now! Theron roared, and then with a mighty leap, plunged into the churning vortex of shadow, Maya clinging tightly to his back. The moment they entered, Maya gasped. The physical world vanished, replaced by a chaotic realm of pure thought and emotion. The whispers became a deafening scream, a cacophony of fear, hatred, and despair, assaulting her mind from every direction. She saw visions of her deepest fears. Theron turning away from her, the Lycans rejecting her, herself alone and powerless, back in her mundane life, but now haunted by the darkness. You cannot fight us. The collective voice of the Shadowkin roared in her mind. You are but a spark. We are the void. Theron, in his wolf form, struggled against the mental onslaught, his powerful body writhing as the darkness tried to tear at his primal instincts, to drive him mad. But his grip on Maya was unwavering, his golden eyes, even amidst the chaos, remained fixed on her, a beacon in the storm. Maya, however, found an unexpected wellspring of strength. The Lycan blood in her veins, combined with her human compassion and resilience, allowed her to face the onslaught directly. She closed her eyes, focusing not on the darkness, but on the warmth of Theron's fur, the unwavering love that bound them, the hope for their future. She projected her feelings outward, a wave of pure, unadulterated light and unity. She thought of the alphas, the elders, even Marius, all standing together. She thought of the human villages, the Lycan strongholds, all connected, all striving for peace. She thought of her bond with Theron, a love forged in chaos, strong enough to bridge worlds. No. The Shadowkin screamed, their collective voice faltering. This is not despair. This is hope. The darkness writhed, recoiling from the pure, vibrant energy Maya was radiating. She could feel the resistance, the malicious intent trying to drag her back into the abyss, but she pushed harder, drawing on every ounce of her being, on every lesson Theron had taught her, on every ounce of courage she had found. Theron, sensing her surge of power, joined her. He projected his own fierce, unwavering love for her, his protective instincts, his ancient Lycan strength, his unwavering belief in their destiny. Their combined power, a fusion of primal Lycan force and human resilience, flared within the heart of the Nexus, a blinding golden light that began to tear at the fabric of the shadow. The vortex began to contract, shrieking as the darkness was forced back, squeezed, compressed. The whispers turned to terrified whimpers, then to a fading hiss. The oppressive cold began to recede, replaced by a burgeoning warmth. Suddenly, with a deafening crack that echoed through the Shadowlands, the Nexus imploded. A blinding flash of golden light erupted, pushing back the encompassing gloom, momentarily illuminating the twisted landscape. Theron and Maya were thrown backward, tumbling out of the collapsing vortex and landing hard on the desolate ground. The surrounding barrier of Lycan and vampire magic had held, protecting them from the worst of the explosive backlash. As the light faded, the Shadowlands were still dark, but the overwhelming sense of malevolence was gone. The whispers were silent. The creeping cold had vanished, replaced by a desolate, quiet stillness. The breach was closed. Theron, shifting back to his human form, immediately crawled towards Maya, pulling her into a tight embrace. His body was bruised, his clothes torn, but his golden eyes glowed with fierce joy and profound relief. "We did it, my queen," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "You did it. You saved us all." Maya, weak but exhilarated, leaned into his touch. She had faced the heart of darkness and together they had won. The war was far from over, but the greatest threat had been neutralized, and in doing so, they had forged a bond stronger than any power, any prophecy, any shadow. Chapter 19. The Dawn of a New Era. The return from the Shadowlands was met with triumphant relief, tinged with exhaustion. The Lycan and vampire forces, though battered, were victorious. The core of the Shadowkin's influence had been shattered, and while residual darkness would linger for years, the immediate threat was neutralized. The alliance, forged in the crucible of battle, emerged stronger, cemented by shared sacrifice. Maya, though physically drained, felt an exhilarated sense of accomplishment. She had faced her deepest fears, confronted the ultimate darkness and emerged not just alive but transformed. The Lycan blood in her veins now felt like a natural part of her, a humming undercurrent of power and heightened awareness. The most profound change was her connection to Theron. It was no longer just a bond, it was a fusion of souls. She could feel his presence constantly, a comforting anchor in her mind. Their thoughts often intertwined, their emotions echoed. They were two halves of a whole, intrinsically linked. The court, once wary, now hailed her as a true queen, a savior. The alphas bowed with genuine respect, the elders gazed at her with reverence, and even Marius, the vampire king, treated her with a newfound deference. Lady Seraphina, who had watched the entire return from her dungeon cell, saw Maya not with triumph, but with a chilling, unsettling pity, knowing she had lost everything. Theron, however, saw only Maya. His golden eyes, once filled with the burdens of leadership, now shone with a profound, almost incandescent love. He treated her not just as his mate but as his equal, his partner in every sense of the word. One evening, after the last of the victory celebrations had died down, Theron led Maya to a secluded balcony overlooking the vast Lycan lands. The moon, now waning, cast a soft, ethereal glow over the forests and mountains. "The breach is closed," he said, his voice soft, "but the world is forever changed. Our people, the vampires, even some humans now know of our existence thanks to your courage. It is a new era, Maya. And it will be fraught with new challenges." Maya leaned into his embrace, her head resting against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "We will face them together," she replied, her voice firm. "We always do." He kissed the top of her head. "Indeed. But there is one final piece of your destiny, my queen, that is yet to be fulfilled." He led her to a clearing in the palace gardens, a sacred space known only to the royal family. In the center stood an ancient stone altar, bathed in moonlight. Theron placed his hands on her shoulders, his gaze intense. The Lycan blood within you has reached its full potential, Maya. Your spirit is ready. It is time to complete your transformation, to embrace your full power, to become fully Lycan, yet remain uniquely you. Maya's heart hammered. She had felt the whispers of this possibility, the stirring of the wolf within her. It was terrifying, exhilarating. Now, she whispered. He nodded. Under the watchful eye of the moon at the heart of our sacred land. This is where you will fully claim your birthright. He moved behind her, his hands gently grasping hers, guiding her to place them on the cold, smooth surface of the altar. As her skin touched the stone, an electric current coursed through her, a wave of primal energy unlike anything she had ever experienced. A searing heat erupted from her core, spreading rapidly through her limbs. Her bones ached, shifted, reformed. Her senses exploded. The scent of damp earth, pine and Theron's familiar musk intensified 1,000-fold. Her hearing became so acute she could hear the subtle rustling of nocturnal creatures in the distant forest. Her vision sharpened, seeing every leaf, every shadow with incredible clarity. She cried out not in pain, but in a surge of pure raw power, an unleashing of something ancient and wild within her. Her skin rippled, fur began to sprout, her teeth elongated and her hands and feet broadened, claws extending. And then it was complete. Maya stood in the clearing, no longer human yet still Maya. She was a magnificent wolf, her fur a shimmering silver gray, her eyes a brilliant, piercing gold reflecting the moon above. She was smaller and more elegant than Theron's formidable black form, but no less powerful, radiating a fierce, undeniable strength. She looked at Theron, who had now fully shifted into his dominant black wolf form. Their eyes met, a silent language passing between them, a profound understanding that transcended words. She felt complete, whole, perfectly balanced between her human heart and her newly awakened Lycan soul. She let out a joyous howl, a powerful resonant sound that echoed through the night, answered by Theron's own deep, guttural roar. It was a declaration to the world. The queen had arrived in her true form, ready to usher in a new era. Chapter 20. Claiming her reign. The first dawn of Maya's fully shifted life was an experience of unparalleled wonder. She felt the warmth of the sun on her fur, the vibration of the earth beneath her paws, the rich tapestry of scents carried on the morning breeze. Every sense was alive, heightened, vibrant. She ran through the palace gardens with Theron in their wolf forms, a blur of silver gray and midnight black, feeling the exhilaration of pure, unadulterated freedom. Her shift was celebrated throughout the Lycan realm. It was seen as the ultimate fulfillment of the prophecy, the final step in her claiming of the throne. The remaining skepticism evaporated, replaced by genuine awe and unwavering loyalty. She was no longer just the king's mate. She was a Lycan queen, walking among them, embracing their ancient power. Her human experiences, however, remained an intrinsic part of her identity. She continued to advocate for understanding, for peace, for finding common ground between the different races. The alliance with the vampires, though still challenging, deepened under her steady hand. She mediated disputes, proposed new initiatives for coexistence, and became a powerful voice for unity in a world still healing from the Shadowkin's corruption. The political landscape of the supernatural world was forever changed. The Shadowkin were defeated, their nexus shattered, but the knowledge of their existence and the unity forged in their defeat had opened the doors between hidden realms. Maya, the former human waitress, became the architect of a new era of cooperation and understanding. She established councils where Lycans, vampires, and even trusted humans could share information, strategize against residual threats, and work towards a safer, more integrated world. She founded schools where young Lycans and even some curious humans could learn about both human and supernatural history, fostering respect and breaking down ancient prejudices. Theron remained by her side, a constant, unwavering pillar of strength and love. He revered her, respected her, and loved her with an intensity that transcended their royal titles. Their bond, forged in a mundane encounter and tested by fire and shadow, was the very foundation of their reign. Their personal life, once formal, blossomed into a tender intimacy. They found solace in each other's presence, in shared laughter and quiet moments. Their love story, which began with an accidental spill and a king's possessive claim, had grown into a profound partnership, a legendary romance that inspired their entire realm. 1 year after her full shift, a grand ceremony was held, not just to commemorate the defeat of the Shadowkin, but to officially crown Maya as Queen of the Lycans. Representatives from the Vampire Coven, led by King Marius, were in attendance, a testament to the unprecedented peace she had brokered. Human dignitaries, privy to the existence of the supernatural world thanks to the alliance, also observed, their faces a mixture of wonder and respect. Maya, in a gown of shimmering silver, stood beside Theron, his dark, powerful presence a perfect counterpoint to her radiant grace. The crown, a delicate circlet of silver and moonstone, was placed upon her head. As it settled, she felt not its weight but its power, its promise. She looked out at the assembled crowd, Lycans, vampires, humans, all gathered in unity. Her golden eyes, now shimmering with both Lycan power and human compassion, met Theron's. He smiled, a proud, loving expression that spoke volumes. As she gave her first address as a fully crowned queen, her voice, clear and strong, resonated through the hall. "I was once just a waitress," she began, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. "An ordinary human in a world I thought I understood. But fate and the love of my king brought me into a world of magic, of power, and of unimaginable challenges. I have learned that strength comes not just from brute force but from unity. Wisdom comes not just from ancient lore but from open hearts. And true power lies in bridging divides, in seeking understanding, and in protecting all who dwell in the light. Together," she concluded, her gaze sweeping over her people, over her allies, over her king, "we will build a new era. An era of peace. An era of strength. An era where all beings can find their place, and where even the most unexpected among us can claim their throne." The cheers were deafening, a roar of approval that echoed through the palace and out into the newly dawning era. Maya, the waitress who became a queen, stood beside her Lycan king, her human heart beating in time with her wolf's soul, ready to lead her people into a future brighter and more united than anyone had ever dared to dream. Their reign had truly begun.